Welcome to Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories. I'm your host, George Affleck. Thanks for joining me as we dig into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders and pioneers in the business. Today, I'm joined by Kris Skiba, the Vice President of Design and Construction of Dexel Development. This company designs and builds multi-unit residential and mixed-use buildings in Halifax. It oversees the operations, managing aspects of project development, from the preliminary design to the final building, commissioning, and occupancy phase. Let's start the conversation now. Kris, thanks so much for joining me today on Constructive Conversations. I know design and construction are things you're very passionate about. Can you tell me a bit more about your journey and your current role as Vice President of Design and Construction?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, George. I started here with Dexel in 2006, and I was lucky enough to start here directly after finishing an engineering degree at Dalhousie, and really just started doing whatever was asked. Applied for a job, not really knowing what I was getting into. I saw Dexel had a crane up in the air, and it looked like an exciting project in downtown Halifax, and I wanted to work here and be part of it. So, applied for, I'm not even sure what the title was at the time, maybe, assistant site super or coordinator or something like that. And really, it was a really small business, just really a handful of family members and a couple employees working here. And it started out, first day was shoveling gravel. Or maybe I'd be counting drywall or checking, loads as they come off the truck, different things like that, whatever needed to be done. So
really just the experience of everybody that might work there in the future.
Yeah, it was absolutely a ground up experience. And looking back, it's probably the best experience one could ask for, because I get to see all aspects of multi-unit residential construction, which is more or less exclusively what we're doing now. And so along the way, worked hard, listened, learned as much as I could. I did a second degree at night. I did my MBA as I was working through over the years. And fast forward, site super, project manager, and spent probably about 7 years on the construction site. Started getting frustrated with quality of drawings, level of coordination that we were seeing on the site. And I said, hey, I want to be involved with some of the design part of this. I've seen this on site. I want to bring that experience to the design. And slowly started getting involved in that. And here we are today. So it's been a really fun journey.
Some beautiful buildings you guys do, these multi-unit buildings.
Thank you.
And they're quite diverse too. I mean, there are some that are straightforward and there's some that are quite complex. So tell me a bit about your, from a design point of view, and of course with the building side behind you and the construction side behind you. How do all those things fit together, especially when you're going, oh, this design is amazing, but you're also going, oh my God, this design is too amazing. I can't build this.
I haven't come across one that's okay, too amazing and able to build yet. There's certainly some you look at and you say, okay, this one's going to be a challenge. But I think that's part of the fun. If you're just building the same thing over and over again, you don't. There's something about that challenging yourself every time and to do better than you did the last time. In terms of where the designs come from, it's the location of the building that's really the foundation for the design. We really try to ground them and in the history of the location, in the flair of the neighborhood, the flavor of what's around them. And our goal is always to make the community that building is in better by the time we leave. And I think we're pretty successful at doing that. So the different styles and flavors of the building are really, they're influenced by what's there and what's around them. And that's why each one is so unique, because each of the locations, there's a different story, there's a different history, and there's a different context that they're in.
That certainly helps, I'm sure. And I think a lot of cities face this when you're building somewhat more high density developments. And you guys work with developers, that it has controversy. So if you think about the neighborhood and the design principles of the neighborhood, or do you find that there's an easier road to success with the neighborhood when you think about things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's always going to be the naysayers. There's always those that are opposed to change. Certainly when you respect the community that's there, the path is easier. And a lot of folks are going to see that, and they're going to see the efforts you're making, but a lot aren't. The proof for me is when we come to the finish of the job, and those same individuals that weren't so keen on the project, you see them and they say hello, and they say how much they enjoy the building and how glad they are to have it in the neighborhood. And that's when you've done a good job and you hit the mark.
Yeah. That's a high five moment for sure.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah.
Dexel is you got in there in 2006, fairly established company, but, how has it evolved over the last, 15, 16 years, and how is it evolving further?
It's, it's certainly evolved a lot. I mean, when I started, really, it was a family business. Louis Lowen, who's the owner of the business, I went for that first interview it was an unfinished basement suite adjacent to the construction site. Louis there, and he had a draftsman, Dragon Maracas, working with him, and that was really Dexel. Walking in and Louis wearing every hat. He's the supervisor, the PM, the developer, the owner, and really a very small business. I mean, I should clarify. Dexel is part of the Lowen Group, and we are a group of companies, and kind of our most notable other counterparts are Dexel Architecture, which falls under Dexel, but also Paramount Management. So a lot of the other family members involved in Paramount Management, which operates and manages the building. There.
You got management, architecture, design, build.
We do, and honestly, that's probably one of our strongest points, is that we see the building from concept, from an acquisition of land, all the way through the design phase, the construction phase, people moving in, management, maintenance, and then we're getting to that stage where some of those early buildings that were built in the late 90s and early 2000s, we're getting into retrofits and upgrades and renovations. So you see the full life cycle, and you're able to take those lessons learned. We did that and it gave us a problem 5 years down the road. Maybe we want to revisit how we're approaching that in new buildings. And it's a really different take and a different way to look at construction that you don't get when you don't have the same kind of setup that we do.
Right, for that holistic approach to, and that's again from a retrofit. If it's building you actually were a part of too, that's okay. We know all the issues with this building and the positive things about this building and what's possible with that building. So it's kind of cool to go back and.
It's certainly interesting when it comes around and that phone rings. Now for me, kind of my first building that I worked on, that's almost 15 years ago. Hey, do you remember how this was wired, or how this, how these pumps were configured, or where this was? And it's sometimes surprising what you actually do remember, and then having those discussions and thinking about in today's terms with what you know now and how technology's changed. It's a really interesting kind of look back.
Yeah. Halifax is the base. Mostly the work is in and around Halifax. I would assume. All of it, So a new business comes how? Is it just word of mouth now, or do you go out there and bid? How's new business done?
Well, we build for ourselves. We're in the.
You don't do any design build for people.
No, so we're kind of in an envious position where our customers are our tenants. So certainly we have people to answer to, but it's a little bit different than when you're building for a client. So we're generating our own future projects, and we're making sure that we are lining up our sites and our opportunities well in advance, and bringing carrying forward that pipeline for the team.
What are your ideal kinds of constructions? We talked a bit about these multi-use, but some of them seem to have a mixed use. Some are residential only. Some are, they seem like more heritage looking almost, because I guess the design or whatever it might be, or it was a retrofit. I was looking on the site. There's tons of different case studies there. What's your ideal kind of project?
I mean, multi-unit residential is, I mean, that's our bread and butter. That's our staple. The commercial components for the most part are there to support the building. They become amenities for the building. You're in a busy urban center. It makes sense to have ground level commercial, have some nice shops, coffee shop, restaurant, those sorts of things, rather than having suites right on the busy road. So generally it's residential, and the commercials there to support it. There's some applications where maybe we've acquired some properties where there was a larger commercial component, and it's just, it's made sense with some of the developments and things around it. In terms of the style of building, for me personally, I love the challenge. I really enjoy I enjoy the challenge of putting something together that is different, is unique, that is going to stand out, and that you can be proud of, and really look back and say, yeah, we did something a little bit different. We did something that, made the city a little bit better. Heritage, like I said, the history of the sites really speak to them. So there's almost always a heritage component, whether it's a preservation of heritage, or an ode to heritage or an homage. But there's certainly almost always that kind of an element. We have a few greenfield type sites, which we've applied more greenfield and modern type buildings to, because we didn't have that type of context there.
Yeah, I know it's like picking your favorite child or something, but when you think about the buildings you've been a part of over the last several years, especially since you got more involved in the design side, is there one that really stands out where you're going, that was cool, that was fun, ticked a bunch of boxes?
Almost everyone I do, I feel that way. It's hard to, whatever the latest and greatest is. Like I said, it's always a challenge to take the lessons you learned on the last one and overcome some of those challenges and bring those lessons forward to the next project. So you're always kind of one-upping yourself. So certainly I'd say almost all of them feel that way. I think the George, which is our most recent completed project, is definitely a highlight for me, but I'm sure the next one will be too. Yeah, ask me in a couple of years, and I'll have another one.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's talk about the design then. I mean, on the technology side, you kind of touched on it, but there's all the technology that's involved in the bells and whistles that people can get now when you're building something. But on the back end, especially from a construction and a design point of view, what are some of the things since you were started in the business that you're like, wow, that's a cool addition that really has made my life easier when I'm building something?
Absolutely. It's, I think construction has been a little later than a lot of industries in adopting technology. And it's, we're in the throes of that right now. It's an exciting time. In terms of the buildings, you see a lot of more sophisticated automation systems and HVAC systems and networks and things that they certainly challenge your skill sets, and being able to incorporate those in the project and do them successfully. From the construction management and administration point of view, the softwares that are out there today, digital drawings, BIM, platforms for us to communicate with each other, it's absolutely incredible what we can do now and how well we can communicate. Believe it or not, in 2006, we were still faxing out meeting minutes from construction meetings. Now we're sending photos with our cell phones. We're chatting with partners and suppliers that are all over the world. We're marking up drawings on tablets, and and carrying those around the job site and doing deficiencies and things like that. A lot of these things, I wouldn't have even thought that they were possible, 15 years ago. So we've come a long way.
Do you embrace it? Do you go, oh God, I have to learn this software now?
No, Look, if you want to work in this industry, I think if you want to be successful in this industry, not only do you have to embrace it, you have to get excited about it. It's it will roll you over if you whether you like it or not. It's a tidal wave of change. So digging in is really the best way to get through it, and using the tools to your advantage. It's kind of exciting, actually, as you start to bring on new tools or adopt new ways of doing things. It's not very long before you see a lot of improvements in efficiency or communication, that you can see tangible results, and that feedback, it becomes addictive to say, oh, well, I can make a little change or adopt something here in technology and see really concrete results in a short period of time. Give me more. What else can I do?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and then who benefits are the people that live in these buildings. And I would think that for you, the kinds of buildings you're building, whether they be residential or commercial or a mix, that kind of technology and good construction are pretty important.
Absolutely. I mean, for us especially, as being the builder, the owner, and the operator of the properties, quality of construction is paramount. We don't look at these projects just from cost of construction. We look at it as cost of construction and the operation of the building over time. So anything that we can do that improves the longevity of the building, the performance of the building, helps us deliver a quality product that's going to last and be manageable, be easy to maintain. Mm-hmm. These things are incredibly important for us. So when you bring technology into the mix that helps you get there, it's a no-brainer.
One of the things, the themes or threads I've been hearing across the country with people I've been interviewing on Constructive Conversations is the labor shortage. The more recent stuff is the concern about interest rates and the economy, which of course I think if you've been around long enough, ups and downs are kind of standard. But this labor shortage seems to be it's across the board, and it seems to be a problem for quite a long time. Is that a challenge you're facing in Halifax, which is where you're based? You're mostly in that neighborhood. You have your teams, but is that a challenge for you?
It's a huge challenge, and I can tell you it's a challenge for the entire industry here. I work very closely with the Construction Association, and it's the number one challenge that we've identified as an industry that we're facing. It's we haven't seen this type of situation, at least since I've been working in this field. So certainly, it's impacted us greatly.
How do you deal with it individually, and how is your organization dealing with it?
Look, I think how I deal with it individually and how the organization is, hopefully very much one and the same. It's about relationships. It's about finding people that you work well with, that you can continue working with, and being willing to compromise when you need to be flexible when you need to. Identifying those that have potential. Maybe they're not there yet, but you can see that they're going to get there, and helping them find that path to get there. It's, there's not 5 people knocking at the door to fill those shoes. Right. So you have to figure out how to work with those that are there and ready to work with you.
You're living proof. You started your job, doing the basics, and now you're the VP there. Where do you see the company going in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see things progressing? You yourself have gone up the ladder. You're a big part of the company now. Where do you see things progressing?
For us, I think it's a lot of the same path that we're on. Multi-unit residential, certainly for the time being, is our direction, and doing our own developments is the path that we're on. It may grow outside of that. We'll see. There's certainly a lot of uncertainty in the economy right now. You noted interest rates as a big one. The labor shortage, cost of construction is very high at the moment. So we're not looking to make any big moves or big changes. I think the status quo for us is working well, and we're focusing on more exciting projects, not necessarily more of them, but some projects that may push the limits of what our capabilities are, both in terms of their own complexity and the size of the projects.
That's exciting for you. I mean, given your background, your growth with the company, the reason you kind of went back to school, the reason you've sort of moved into different areas to see that kind of evolution, but also progressiveness in design build, that must be exciting for you.
Oh, it's incredibly exciting. I always find it interesting when, I walk back in a building that, maybe I worked on 10 years ago. And in my mind, if I haven't been in that building in a few years, like I said, every building that we do is the best at that time. We're always trying to improve. So I have that feeling of, this is a great building, and I walk back in it and I can almost see my own progression and the progression of the company. When I compare the product we were producing 10 years ago and the product now, I can say, we've learned and we've changed this, or we've done that better. So it's fun in terms of you almost have a built roadmap of your own career that you can walk through and see some of the lessons, see the evolution in thinking and the change in technology and techniques that we're using. It's really neat that way to have that kind of built history of yourself and of the work your team does.
And we'll see how that moves forward, and that'll be exciting years ahead for you. Thanks for joining me today, Kris. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This has been Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories. I'm George Affleck, your host. Thanks for joining me as we dug into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders and pioneers in the business.